I didn't set boundaries. I would just let anybody talk to me anyhow and I would not respond. I became victimized. At some point I was bullied. Hello everyone. My name is Krista Benjibebu and welcome to my YouTube channel. Once again, I am a budding content creator. I just started this whole YouTube channel thing quite recently. And for work, I'm a fashion designer, and some days I am the call center agent. So this is something quite personal I want to talk about today. It's something that has affected me in the past, and I'm actively working hard to, overcome it. I have actually made a lot of success, but somehow I still feel a little bit like it's still somewhere there in the background. You just need to have the right triggers that would just bring it up again. And what is that? Is the feeling of inadequacy. Feeling inadequate as a person, especially when you look at your current circumstances or where you are in life and you begin to feel like you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, or you're not worthy enough to be in a particular setting. And when did I realize this? The first time I realized that I had feelings of inadequacy was when I found myself in a place where there were a lot of people who were working, who were actively building something. That was the first time I really became conscious of that feeling of inadequacy. And this was sometime last year, late last year. I enrolled in a fashion class or fashion course. And even though I already had some background in fashion, and I saw a whole lot of people who were already doing a whole lot of things, in terms of building their business, building their brand, and some of them were even quite young. On the first day, I was quite confident until I began to see what every other person was doing with their business or how far they've gone already. My confidence began to dwindle gradually. The more I looked at what you were doing, the more less confident I became being in that space. I became more shyer. I became more timid. When a task was given, I would withdraw into the background, letting the others I felt had more experience to go forward and have the text performed. And it showed up in so many ways. I began to realize other areas of my life where I was showing signs of feeling inadequate and how that was affecting my overall perception and how people treated me generally. And even while I was there, I saw how the fact that I wasn't so confident, I saw how it translated to how people treated me in terms of how they addressed me, in terms of how I was spoken to, because I felt the feeling was quite obvious. It was tangible. And that's one thing with having a low self-esteem. It becomes obvious to other people and it translates in how they treat you. That became a very big challenge for me. I began to realize and began to take charge of it one step at a time. So what I'm doing here today is to share with you how I have handled feelings of inadequacy so far between last year and now, and where that has gotten me to. So the first thing I did was I began to challenge myself more. While in that sewing class, during projects or personal projects, I began to give myself higher tasks. I began to challenge myself more to make the most of my time there, to, come up with something different, something unique that wasn't what every other person was doing. And that was the first step I took that began to, boost my confidence in terms of people began to see, my classmates began to see that, oh, even though I look like a beginner or I look like a complete novice, but then the class was making me challenge myself more. And that began to also translate in how they treated me, how they spoke to me, how they would come to consult me for certain things. And it was really interesting, honestly. Although I'm not a fan of, treating people well because of how good they are or how you perceive them or how valuable you think they are. To me, it feels off though. But then it was a step for me because it helped me to realize that this self-esteem thing is really how you present yourself and how people perceive you. I began to present myself as someone who was worthy of being respected or someone who was worthy of being in that class. And that was the first step I took, and my classmates began to, show me a little bit more respect in that regard. And that might not be a completely good thing, but for me, it was a starting point. Sometimes people treat you better in terms of the value they perceive that you bring to the table or they feel that you bring to the table. So the next thing I did was I did something that scared me. For some time now, I've been planning to do this thing that I felt like everybody in my family was going to go against me, and I've been pushing it forward. And I just decided, you know what? The hell, I'm going to do this once and for all. I'm going to do this because I really wanted to do it. It was really on my mind, but then I was really thinking about what my family would say. And that's one thing with being a first child. It kind of makes you a people pleaser. Everyone always tell you to be the example, set the standard. Don't mislead your siblings, your younger ones. And began that pressure, that expectation of you, that expectation that requires you to be perfect or to be, to get things right. Usually it hindered me a lot because I was always thinking of what will my daddy say or my siblings say, what will my relatives say, would they do family meeting on my head? That kind of thing. So it's really, really bad. So I had to decide at that point that no, I was going to do this for myself, for my growth, for my future. Because you can't please everybody forever. Even if you decide to follow whatever it is that is expected of you, that's not going to guarantee that they will still be happy with you eventually. And some months down the line, I'm so happy that I did. That's opened so much perspective. I've become wiser, and I realized that the thing that you think is so scary, just do it afraid, and you realize that it was actually the best thing that you ever done for yourself. Another thing I did to boost my, self-confidence and feelings of adequacy was to start dressing up more. I began to, invest more in my looks, my daily appearance, not necessarily buying makeup stuff or anything, but just in the way I dress, the way I present myself. I began to, put a little bit more packaging into the way I present myself. And that really helped me a great deal because it's really funny how people treat you better just by the way you dress. And honestly, all these things I'm saying, I'm not really a fan of people treating you better because of the way you appear. But that's really what happens. That's really what works out there. And I believe in respecting people, whether they dress shabbily or they don't dress shabbily. But then that's not what's obtainable. That's not what's the majority thinks. So I began to dress better. And I saw that even people who didn't like me initially began to, try to warm up to me or whatever that was. And I knew that was completely fake. But then it showed me that, showing up better, dressing up better was a way to, boost your confidence. Honestly, I did this more out of desire than to, help me with my confidence issues. I began exercising. I began to go out for morning jogs. I began to, do this more regular. At least I do this like 3 times a week. I jog for like 30 minutes. And honestly, I did not even realize how much of an impact this would be on my life until I started doing it. And I feel like my mood has been enhanced. I don't feel depressed. I have this, great mood. I feel energized. I feel inspired. I feel more focused. Honestly, exercise does a lot, even apart from your health. Just the part where it improves your overall countenance, how you feel about yourself. It's a whole lot. And I enjoy exercising. If I could even do this more. Honestly, this thing that you hear, do not compare yourself with others. It's not that easy as it sounds, because when you find yourself in a room with people who presumably are supposed to be on the same level with you, or you think they're supposed to be on the same level with you, and you see what every other person is doing, there is this temptation to compare. It's not so easy because if you're not used to meeting people who are a whole lot of people who are doing a whole lot of things better than you, you would not know how uneasy it is not to compare. Now, if you do that often, it will help you, to learn more, to try to, network. But if you're completely new to it, the first thing that will come to your mind is you start feeling less of yourself. So it's just about exposure to this quality of people. Yeah. But the more exposed you are, the easier it is for you to learn how to stop comparing and even just learn from them and do better in your own life. So that's one thing that really helped me. I began to even consult them. Even when I even have challenges, I began to, see them more as collaborators in my own growth journey as well, and not people that I need to compete the lines of. First, I was a people pleaser because not in that class though, in some other situation, in some other place. At some point, I was bullied, and I had to just, I just had to stand up, and I just have had enough, and I began to stand up more for myself. I began to set boundaries, and that's even help people to respect me more. If you want to approach me, you have to think of what you want to say and how to say it properly. You don't just, say things because you feel like you can say it. So that was one thing that also helped me. I began to show up more in more confident way, in more powerful way. If you're a people pleaser, many people are going to abuse that. So I began to realize that I was being taken advantage of, and being a people pleaser was not helping me. And the more I did that, the more it reduced people's regard of me. So I began to show up more powerful. I set boundaries. If anyone spoke to me in any setting, I would also let them know that no, I would not accept that. So that also became something that boosted my confidence a whole lot. Sometimes it's good to let people know that they are crossing the line and they will put themselves back in check. So there was set goals. It feels so life enriching, so fulfilling to set a goal and achieve it. And even if it's a small goal, as long as you achieve it, it's really very fulfilling. Makes you feel like, yes, you're doing something with your life. And that's one thing that's also helped me a whole lot to feel more adequate, to feel, better about myself as a person. So that's it for me on this one. If you have any point that resonated with you the most, do well to let me know in the comment section. I'll be there to read them all. All right. Do well to like the video and subscribe so that more people can get to see this video. All right. Thank you so much for being here. See you on the next one. Bye.